Hello, David.
Brian, how's it going?
Good. How are yourself?
Doing well, thanks.
So,
Yeah.
normally you Miranda, and you like for the last number of weeks, you all have like timescale swag. So we were cleaning up, found that I had an old timescale
Ooh,
scarf. So I'm like, you know what? It's winter here. I'll put on the timescale scarf and
nice.
I got yeah.
I'm not wearing timescale swag today,
It's all
unfortunately.
good. No worries. No
Um,
worries.
anyway, yeah.
So
So welcome everyone. So Ryan, I asked Ryan to come today because he was putting together some interesting stuff dealing with Wordle, which has been you know around in this last little while, and I thought it would be fun to just do a little bit of an exploration around it. So I'm going to let him start, and then we're going to just chat about it. Um, and yeah, but I just wanted to let y'all know that I'm planning to also do a sort of Postgres/Timescale 101 course, which I'm actually doing for the entire Timescale company or whoever wants to join in Timescale, because we have developers who have lots of different backgrounds. Even some of the folks who build the database aren't huge database users. They are really good C programmers, but they only know sort of parts of the database. So the goal of the course is to do sort of database, Postgres, timescale fundamentals, and give a good background on that. And we're doing that for internal folks as well as external folks. And we're going to be using this time slot every other week starting February 1st to do that. So I just wanted to announce that briefly for those who are interested. Please feel free to join. That's all. But then I'm going to hand it over to Ryan, and let's just do a little exploration of Wordle today.
Yeah, let's see what happens. So for those of you who will watch this or are watching now, a couple quick things. This is obviously currently a live stream. So if you happen to be watching it live, we are watching the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And just trying to figure out, for me, this is a little bit of what some of the ways I've grown to really understand the technology I'm trying to use, mostly and usually a database and SQL and all the features and functions that are possible by seeing people do. So please feel free to ask questions. We'll do the best we can to answer them. If you happen to watch this afterwards, recording, feel free to please put the questions in YouTube in the comments. We'll do our best to answer them. But this is the kind of content Dave and I talk about a lot. Every time we end up on a video call together, we end up brainstorming ways we could demonstrate something. So Wordle was like, I had been seeing this like at the tail end of the year, like this thing start to pop up, and I had no idea what these green yellow boxes were. It's like, what? I literally don't understand because there's no link included. So I was like, what is this? Like, this is so weird. And so about a week and a half or 2 weeks ago, I was like, oh, that's what this is. So
I feel like
started doing
everyone sort of
Wordle.
discovered it then too.
Yeah, like what's going on? And so for those of you who don't know, this is what I'm talking about. So on Twitter, I started to see these tweets often. This is Lorraine. She's our community manager. And she's been kindly doing Wordles the last week so that I to feed into our database. So at some point last week, I was up doing a project, getting ready for a presentation, and I looked at this grid of up to 25 little squares of various colors, and my brain said, I wonder if I could get that into a database somehow and figure out how to do something with it. So I've
30,
been kind of.
yes.
Oh, it is. You're right. 5 times 6 is actually 30. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Well, I think I said 25 somewhere else probably. Oh, well, math is hard. SQL is fun and math is hard. So that was kind of on my brain. Like, I wonder if I could do this. And so in a matter of like a quick evening, I have not used a Twitter API in a long time. They have a new version 2 of the API. And so there's a limitation of how many tweets you can consume a month through their services. They haven't yet figured out they haven't yet made available a pay platform for that new API. So it's like, how can I do this? So I hacked together a pretty quick Python script to set up the stream. You basically set up a search filter. So this is somewhere here's a search filter I'm using. I will find it. It doesn't really matter, I guess, but I thought it'd be fun to show. Yeah, so here's the search filter right here. So, I was finding as other tweets were coming in that there was, things for various languages. And nothing against Spanish and others, it just wasn't fitting where we needed it. So just trying to take some of those out, took out retweets, took out replies, took out quotes, mostly because a lot of people are responding to other people's tweets about this. And so I was consuming the API very quickly, even in testing. So I was like, let's just get the original and see how far it gets us. Both David and I, one of the things that you recognize immediately is that these are Unicode characters, which is kind of the extended character set. And so you'll notice I only have 2 colors here. And one of the reasons is, at least within Python, there's somehow a mismatch. I could take the actual, so here's a sample tweet, and you can see the actual Unicode characters here in their Unicode string form. I actually, after like 20 minutes, I gave up. I was like, I don't have time to spend on this, but I could not find a way to actually set through the API the search for the white, the gray and the black, or the white and the black, or whatever they are. And I think David and I are finding out that's because there's multiple character sets being used for that specific Unicode emoji. And so it's troublesome. So that's why I'm only searching for green and yellow. I finally had to make a compromise, and that was the compromise. You know what? Presumably within 30 characters, there's going to be at least 1 yellow and 1 green. If there's not, we don't care. How you got to that, we have no idea. And so that's what we did. So I've been letting this run since, I think, Sunday night, maybe. And where we are currently, if I come on over here, I think currently we are at, so here's the guesses we have. So we have about 300,000 tweets over 4 or 5 games. Now, there are other game IDs in here. I think people have figured out it's a NIM browser game. So they figured out how to move ahead in times. There are people posting like game 250 in game 50. So I don't know what they're doing. I don't care. I've decided I'm not going to look because I just enjoy doing it every day.
Yeah.
My kids have loved it. Like now, all of my kids get up in the morning and like, Dad, have you done it yet? Because I don't want to spoil it. Like, no, I'm good. Yeah. So that's what we've been doing. And so, just to get it in, this is one conversation, David, you and I have talked about a lot for a number of projects recently, which is, I didn't really know what I wanted to do with this, right? I just needed to start to get data, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I didn't put much effort into schema, right? It's not like, sometimes I think, honestly, SQL data sources kind of get this rap, like you have to know everything ahead of time. And one of the things we've been recognizing is this developed over about 2 hours. So over the weekend, I spent 2 hours doing the script, trying to figure out the API. And originally, I just had like created at timestamp, I think the author handle, the Twitter handle and ID, and then the tweet. But as it went, I was like, okay, I can ask for some more information, verified, if I ever wanted to know if verified users do better or worse. I don't know. It's like, well, it's there. Maybe I'll get it. But the tweet itself, it's like, I didn't spend really much time pulling that apart. I didn't want that to be a Python thing. I wanted to figure out how to do this in SQL. If it was possible to pull this string apart, specifically in Postgres, turn it into a table of data that I could do something with. So that's where we are. So the table itself, the tweets itself, I'm not picking on Miranda. I was trying to, so Miranda is normally here. I have a query in another browser somewhere with all of the Timescale staff to figure out who's been submitting tweets. But I needed a tweet. So Miranda was the first one on the list. So this is what the tweet looks like. I just store the tweet text, whatever people have in there. And so we have to figure out how to get those boxes out and make sense of them. That's kind of where we are.
Yeah. So I think, so then what we were sort of talking about from there is we wanted to sort of figure out some different ways of maybe representing this.
Right.
And so, one thing, so this looks like maybe it was a very wide table format.
Yeah. Our first discussion was like, well, so then what do we do if we have 30 things? Would we want to tend towards a wide one? And you thought like maybe it would be good to do something more narrow for every row of emojis we have. So for every 5 letters or representative boxes, we store that as a separate row for each tweet. It's like, oh, that's right. This is back to the wide or narrow table format. What makes sense?
Hmm. Yeah, and then we also talked about maybe doing uh, maybe doing something where we would even do an array or something like this. We'd have to think about like different ways of doing this and doing our just getting a sense of how we would. We also talked about maybe making an enum type to represent this.
That's right.
So I think maybe if we just want to go through a few of these things and try and sort of I guess maybe I don't know, can we both share screen, or we can just pass it back and forth? Maybe otherwise it'll be too small. Um, but do we
Yeah.
want to think about how we might sort of transform this data? Just think about a few different ways that we might represent it, and start just maybe populating a little bit, thinking about the types of queries that we can then run on that data. So I think for me, one of the
Agree.
big types of queries that I would be interested in running is like uh, I'd be interested to know whether something like uh, if you is there a placement where you got green sort of earlier in your um, in your
Right.
set of guesses that would uh, like is there one section or another where that would be better? Like so that's one thing that I would be interested in knowing, but I don't know what are some questions that you would want to ask about this.
Yeah, I mean, one of the first ones. So there's a question that came in. How do we install TimescaleDB? So welcome. So glad you're here, Fahad. Um, there's multiple ways. I just showed you on the screen and put the link in the chat. You can self-host it. You can. We have a cloud environment that you're welcome to sign up for a 30-day free trial and just get it going. Lots of opportunities. So we get all the there's Docker images and everything. So it's all here, hopefully fairly and quick and easy for you to follow. So that'd be great for you to follow along. For me, I think any of those things. It's like I was interested in particularly games that seem to be easier. Does it seem to be easier for everyone else? Just a
Mhm.
simple, even just that simple. On average, how long does it take a game to be guessed for most people? And then knowing easier or harder, it's exactly like you said. If someone gets, you know, 2 letters in the first guess, how likely are they to get it within 4 or, or what it might be, something of that
Yeah.
nature. Um,
So um, how do you think you would like how should we attack this? What do you think? Uh, uh, Fahad, thanks for the question here. I think we're going to try and stick to this for right now. I think we can get into some of that other stuff. If you want to maybe even ask in our Slack channel or something like that. We do have a Docker image uh, with our stuff, so you can definitely look that up. But I think we're just going to try and, for right now, stick on this topic, and we can get into some of that other stuff maybe another time or in another place. Um, so I know that when we looked at your first schema, um, it has some sort of derived information from the tweet. So
yeah.
like the guess total and things like that. So how'd you end up doing that? Was
Yeah,
that
good
done in
question.
Python
So
or in SQL?
it was done in Python. So originally what I thought I might do is just dump the entire JSON string into a JSON-B column. And in fact, to be really honest, now that I'm saying that out loud, I meant to still do that anyway. And I realized that at some point along that 2-hour journey this weekend, I forgot to do that. That's something we have done before. So with the Twitter API, there's some things you can get, some things you can't get. It can't come to find things like location. Here's a great example of location. It's whatever the user puts in there for location. So it's not like we could correlate people in specific time zones or something. That wasn't really going to be possible based on the information that was available. So in the end, I decided to take the tweet. That was the most important thing for me, is to get the text of the tweet, and take out a few of those things in Python. It was easier just to kind of wrap around those things. I still meant to save it, and I didn't, so I apologize for that. That was on the agenda. So that's what I did, and for me, it was mostly as things were happening, because I knew we were gonna wait until Thursday to do this, and I didn't want to play with this data too much aside from that. I did pull out the game number, using regex in the, here's the regex right here. So basically just taking those 2 values out, what was the guess and what was the game number, so that I had something else to just kind of keep track of, without doing a lot of extra work. So, a good
Cool.
question.
Yeah. So, well, maybe we can think about writing a few queries just on that stuff. Then, I mean, you wanted to, think about sort of the game number, just even like starting really simple here, just talking about that, and then maybe we can go into some of the Unicode and regex stuff inside the database to see what we can do with that. Because I know we were playing around with that. That might be a nice place to start here, and we'll see what we get to. We have an hour, but we're
Yeah.
already 20 something minutes
Yeah,
in, so
so
we'll see
as I
how
said,
far we get. But
what I did is, so if I take this off, as far as raw tweets go, this is, just a count of oops. Did I Oh, group by, my apologies. Let me take the where clause off. The reason I did the where clause, is because, like I said, you'll see there's lots of guesses for the game number that have nothing to do with the current number most of us are seeing in the world. I don't know exactly how this is happening. Again, I assume people have been iterating through games to play them. Since this is an in-browser game, if you want to go look, I'm sure you can figure out how to see what's going on. So you can see pretty clearly the games that are currently in process. So we can see that it's, I started over the weekend, so that's when game 209, 210 was starting to fade. And you'll see things went up over time. The script failed at one point. You can see that for game 214, and then we're back to game 215 having quite a lot. So actually, I'm wrong. We're getting close to 500,000 tweets, it looks like. And so I just took, I wanted to see what was the average difficulty for each of those games. And it's pretty clear that one of them was significantly harder than the others. And it's funny, on Tuesday, I think was game 213, many people were like, that one was really hard. I couldn't get that one. Okay, this scarf is too hot. I'm taking it off. Anyway, Timescale, everybody. So I thought that was interesting. My family, my kids, hey dad, did you finish it? How many guesses? I said, well, I'm ahead of the average today, or I'm behind the average. I should have gotten that. So
that's fun. Yeah, and I'm sure that there's some response bias also here, where people are maybe a little less likely to post when they. So don't feel too bad if you're not
for sure.
if it not. I feel like there's definitely some. Anyway, so yeah, so that's one thing that we could do. Did we ever? Well.
One other thing
Yeah.
that came to mind that I was just thinking about is even just seeing game author ID tweets raw group by game author ID having count in one. I'm just curious if anyone, so there's some people that looks like they posted multiple games a day. So the Twitter stream that I had is a real-time stream. And so I can't guarantee this because I'm not a Twitter developer. But in my manual checking, it did appear that I never got older tweets, right? So if something failed and I started again. So I was wondering that, do people maybe do it once and then decide they want to see a different letter combination? Could they get to it differently or something?
Yeah. Do you want to try? I mean, it might be if so. We had that tweet ID in there. Do you want to do like an array ag of tweet ID and see what shows
Oh,
up?
interesting. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, they look
Or
to be in
actually,
tweaked.
it looks like they are different, right?
Yeah.
For the most part.
So that's
Um,
interesting.
so that's interesting. So that's like this is one of those things where I do think this is sort of a rather fascinating thing, where we're also sort of getting into some of the data cleaning type operations, right? So this is one of the ways that
Right.
you can start thinking about like, okay, how do I when I'm working with this data, how do I like do some sanity checking on it? Right. So you're going to look at one of these.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so gonna look at tweet, author, the I won't out the author, I guess, at this point. My I guess it's public, I'm not sure how that works.
Yeah.
Uh, where game equals 212 in this case. This person did at least 3, it looks like. Yeah, they did 3.
Yeah. And author ID.
Uh, from
The from definitely would help.
huh, interesting. We also have, so let's do this. Let's look at the created at. So this is all on the same day and definitely very different.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. So the latest one was solved in the fewest. I guess that makes sense, right? We have a 6, a 5, and a 2. So I wonder, that's interesting. Now this could
It's
be,
like once you know it, it's a little bit, but yeah.
yeah. I mean, who knows? Maybe this could be it's not unlike me. Once or twice I've posted my daughters, just to
Yeah.
friends. And I was like, oh, look at my daughter. So it could be that it's a family and
Exactly.
they're just posting it. So yeah.
Yeah. I totally believe that. Yeah. So, what other? So how do we want to start thinking about then? So I guess like one thing that we had talked about was maybe creating an enum that represented this, so we don't have to use the Unicode characters to do all this.
Right.
And by the way, what settings do you are you're using PSQL for this? Or are you using something
This
different?
is dbeaver. No, I'm
Oh, this
using
is
dbeaver.
dbeaver. Okay, so it shows the paragraph markings and stuff, or did you have to turn that on somehow?
No, it does that now. I think something's changed recently. So in dbeaver, you can do either the grid mode
I
or the
see.
text mode. I use the text mode.
I see.
Um, just makes it easier to copy and paste stuff.
Yeah, especially here where I've been trying to search for some weird characters that are potentially in there, and
Yeah, I imagine that.
yeah. Anyway, yeah. So let's. I don't know. What do we want to try to get to? Like a different representation that maybe is a little more useful for us to do some more
Yeah, so
statistical stuff on.
I think it'd be fun to, you and I've played just briefly because I said I don't want to spend an hour trying to figure this out. So we have played briefly with the Unicode group to see what we can do in Postgres specifically because Postgres really has some excellent array functions,
Hmm.
ways of taking things like text and chopping it up into something more usable.
Hmm.
Has really good built-in regex functionality, things like that.
Yep.
So I think taking this, how do we get this grid of potentially from anywhere from 5 to
Hmm.
30? These 6 guesses, how do we get them into a form that we can, uh, you know, look at number of right guesses per right letters per guess, nearly right letters or whatever we're calling them, and then incorrect letters and just see what we can figure out from there.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's think about what that would look like then. We sort of have three possible things, right? It's
Right.
not. It's like not in. Yeah, maybe we should explain that for people. We should probably should have explained that a while ago, in fact, for people. But
Oh, good point.
what those mean. So the green means you got the letter right. So when we do this, like the green means you got the letter right, and so like the letter is correct and in the right spot. Yellow means you got a letter that is in the word, but it's not in the right spot. And gray means the letter that you guessed is not in the word at all.
Correct.
Or if you've guessed a letter twice, then that letter does not appear again in the word, because you can have letters appear more than once, which I think was confusing to some people.
Yeah.
So so I guess sort of the analysis that we're trying to maybe get to, and we'll see if we actually get there, I don't know if we will, is something like, well, okay, if I get, well, so maybe the first analysis we can think about, right, is if based on the number of letters that I get in guess one or guess two, what do I usually, how many guesses does it take? So we're sort of
Right.
relating the number of corrects and the number of maybes. And so maybe we can group it in each row, or in each, yeah, bucket, if that makes sense.
I think it does.
So so then we want sort of to split this into, so each one would then have multiple things based on a guess number, right?
Correct.
And we'd probably want to eventually group by guess number, and maybe the number of correct letters, right? And then the eventual outcome.
Correct.
So now this is not going to let us very easily necessarily. I mean, we're going to have to think about how we do this, right? One thing that it's not going to do is say, okay, well, if I got 3 letters in the first guess, how often do I then get, like, how, I guess, yeah, it doesn't, and then 3 letters in the second guess, right? We can't know what you did before very easily there, but we'll figure that out. Maybe we'll try to get that eventually later.
Yeah.
So the thought is we're going to try to split this out into individual rows, and so Ryan has a way to do that here.
Yes, there's multiple ways to think through this. A number of functions within Postgres, lots of regex and array opportunity, right? So there's many functions. A string, you can split a string to a value of arrays. You can take a string like this, do a regex on it. And so regex, for those of you who don't know, is a regular expression. That's what regex stands for. And regex allows you to, there's a predefined, mostly predefined pattern. Each language, some languages use slightly different representations, but the basics are you give it a form of pattern of characters you're looking for, and it can be a very long set of parameters and patterns and so forth. And then it will take those groups and do something with it. And so in this case, it's giving me, I tried numerous things. So we have, I was only looking for tweets that had Wordle and had these characters, these emojis in it. So we certainly missed other tweets that reformatted, used something different, whatever. We get all that. My original thought was to try and break this up based on, like, if they copied it directly from the website, you're going to get 2 character returns after this little, pretty defined set of words and characters here. Honestly, it proved to be a little bit difficult. And after a few minutes of play, I decided really what I wanted was to say, find any of these characters. And if you find a group of 5 of them in a row, that's what this means. So this is your set of potential characters. And then if you find 5 of them in a row, take that group and spit it out. And so in this case, I'm just limiting to 100, but we pretty quickly get at least 5 rows out of this, out of this tweet. So this is taking one tweet, splitting it up into 1 row per guess, as we're using those letters now, those characters.
So
now,
just
both
to do a
Debbie and I,
sanity check, why don't we add in the?
for sure.
I was thinking we could add in the actual tweet just to see if it.
Let me do it at the end. All right. So in this case,
Yep.
So it's retaining order. You can see, at least within these few, here's the order it had, yellow and then that and so forth. And so that order is retained. 4 guesses, 4 guesses. So initially, this seems to regex matches is different from regex match, but it basically will do this grouping for you. It takes each any item that's found in there will take and put it as part of a row in an array.
Yeah. So
That was the first step.
yeah, and let me also share my screen just to.
Yep.
Um,
From here, one of the first things I thought about, and I think you
gonna-
did this, we can also do something like array ag. I can't do
Let me
it
just
here. Yeah, go ahead
also,
and take
before
over.
we do that,
Yeah.
and I'll bring you back up in a sec.
No, you're
So
good.
I just wanted to show you. So this is when I go looking for things in the Postgres docs, right? I know that if I'm looking for things like regex matches or any of these sort of regular expression things, I'm usually going to go to chapter 9 of the docs, which is functions and operators. And here I'm going to look through the table of contents, and then I go to pattern matching. So if I want to know like about this stuff, I go to pattern matching, and then I might even search in the page to find regex matches because I know about that. But you can also find, you can also just read through it and find the various ones. So this tells you actually what regex matches does. And unfortunately, it can be a little hard to find other documentation. Sometimes their documentation is good, and sometimes it's a little bit like, oh man, it's a little hard to find what actually regex matches does, right?
Yep.
So it returns a set of text arrays. So it's returning a set of arrays. So when we think about this, what's the difference between a set and an array in Postgres anyway? A set actually means that it's returning multiple rows. It's a set returning function. Whereas an array says, well, I've put these results together. So in this case, the text array is actually a set of text characters in an array format. And in theory, I think.
Do you want to zoom in a little bit, David?
Oh yeah. Oh no. Okay. So regex matches. Okay, right. So we have text arrays, right? Now the G flag means that we're going to return all the matches. So that's going to give us. Now, what I don't know actually, do you know, is the reason that it's returning an array because it could return multiple substrings if there were multiple. So let's look at maybe let's go back to your query. I'm going to turn mine off. So in your query, right, we have one capturing group. If we had a second capturing group, would it return that as a second part of the array? I think probably, yeah, right?
Probably would. I think you're right. So if we do that.
Is that the same thing, or is that, did you run it, or no? Not yet.
I'm trying to run it.
No, it's not working.
Doesn't like that.
Okay.
Probably because I think I would have to do this, wouldn't I? Have to do that.
Okay. There we
right.
go.
So you have to get up towards.
Okay. So now we get.
Yeah. Okay. So eventually, if I get to, I'm just going to do that really quickly to show you, even though there could be up to, if I do 4 of these, we're going to start to lose out on some because all the 3s are going to be gone, right? Because there's.
Yeah, I mean, we could do 6, and that would sort of get our full array if we cared to, but that may not make sense.
Right.
But yeah, okay. Just wanted to. Yeah. Oh yeah. And then we'll lose anything though that doesn't have 6. So that's is what you're saying. Cool.
Yeah. So there's a question as we're talking, and I don't know if you have any thoughts on this or not. Here's my general experience. Is the question is, might be a bit out of scope, but how fast is regex matches function? In general, it's at least my quick opinion is going to be your mileage may vary, and it depends on how broad your regex expression is, right, and how much you're actually querying. But regex in general,
it's pretty quick.
Feels pretty low overhead to me. Just like the array functions in Postgres, I'm always surprised at how quickly things happen. I was like, oh, this is really fast.
Yeah. So I'd say the regex matches function is not bad. It also depends on, of course, on the size of the strings that you're searching through in that column.
Sure.
Right.
For sure.
So that's going to be, I think, that's going to have a pretty large impact on performance as well.
Let me just tell you really quickly. This is what
Yeah.
at least in the next step, what I did. So I recognized that issue. And so I think you might have another way to think this through.
Yeah.
Realizing that I was getting at least all of the rows out, I was getting a set. What I could do with that is then take this as like a CTE or something, right? So I could say with,
So
I don't know. Go
the
ahead.
thing that well, yeah, why don't you go? Yeah.
Yeah, so I decided, hey, I have this thing. I want to get an array back out. This kind of felt like the easiest thing, as it were. But then I could say select, say game author handle, and then say yes, array tag guess from G1 group by game author handle. So that is what I then tried next, which gets me closer, right? So now I have an array of arrays, but that wasn't quite what I wanted either. So it's like, okay, this isn't quite it. What do I do next? So
Yeah.
what I could do then is what, a nest? Sorry,
No, I would just do guess and do
like, I like
the brackets 1 just to get the first
Oh,
element
that
of
makes
guess.
sense.
Because we
course.
should only have one, I think, because we only have one thing.
Right. There we go.
Okay.
I think I did
So
mention
that's a little closer, right? But it's not. I still think it's not quite. So we actually can because then what were you going to do there? Like we wanted to assign the ordinality of this, right? We wanted to get the guesses in order and give them like have their ordering be part of what we're
Right.
getting here, right? So you're
That
then
was
going
the
to
last.
unnest it.
I was then going to unnest it and basically insert this. And so I would take this table, probably this narrow table, which I don't have yet. I haven't created this, but something like
Yeah.
this, which would be, letter 1, letter 2, letter 3, letter 4. I think I have this query. I got closer by doing something like this. So let me pull this down and see if I can. I was trying to think this through. How was I going to do this? This is not the most efficient approach, but I created a little function to quote unquote clean this. Say, hey, if it's green, assign it a value of this. If it's yellow, assign it a value of this. If it's anything else, assign a value of 0.
So can we
So
see that?
eventually, yeah, eventually.
Can we look at that
go ahead.
function? Sorry.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So take the guess.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's going to come in as text. Again, probably other ways we could have done it. We have since now come to find that there are multiple Unicode characters for the black and white, at least.
Yeah.
So you could have done probably an array of these and done something like a regex match to replace them or something like that. So, but this takes the string that comes in, replaces each occurrence with a 1 or 2 or 0. And eventually, I don't know what I was doing. What's up with this? So where I was trying to get to was this, and maybe this is not going. Oh, I was playing with something else.
Okay, well, let's go back to, so before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's go back to your original query to get this into the arrays, because we wanted to figure out how to get the ordinality, because I think there's a pretty quick way to do that, as it turns out, that I honestly forget about sometimes. So let's go back to your first one, your regex matches.
Very first one?
Yep. So this one, actually, we can do this straight away with regex matches. So if we just take regex matches and put it in our from clause, and say with ordinality after it, it will just work. So comma and then boop and say with ordinality as guess. And actually, we may want to call that now we're going to name it. So let's call that g.guess. Sorry, it's actually g and then parentheses guess. Okay.
Yep.
So so now if we say, and then we can take that out, and we want to do, we want to keep tweet in there, and then maybe let's put ordinality. Yep. So that's going to be our thing, and g.guess. So now if we run that, I think we're going to get what you want. We'll see.
Hey.
Okay, I think we should also probably take the guess out of the array. We don't want it really as an array, so g.guess1. So what is this doing? Okay, so let's talk about what this is doing here. So regex matches, remember we said it returns a set of arrays. So in order to remove the array part, well, first let's think about, so basically.
Yeah, so could you just help, let's make sure, so for I tell you this all the time. Coming from some other SQL engines, this is odd to me.
Yeah.
I have a from thing that doesn't actually exist in the world. This is not a table.
It's a set returning function.
How's this
and
working,
I always
man?
screw up how this works with set returning functions. It turns out you can refer back to a previous from entry in a set returning function. So
okay, so this is our actual table.
Yeah, and in fact, we might want to rename that. So do an as for that, say as tr, right, or whatever.
Yep.
And then just so that people can see where this is, it's tr.tweet.
Yep.
Right. So run that again. Make sure that still works.
Yeah, let's do that. Still works.
Cool. Okay. So what we got is tr.tweet is now referring back to a previous from clause entry, and it's putting it into a set returning function. So you can put set returning functions into your from clause, and then they're treated as a table, because a table they're treated, sorry, I should actually say they're treated as a relation.
Okay.
Right. We can save table for like the actual base rel.
Okay. Yeah, it's funny. I was trying to explain that in the talk this weekend. I'm like, how?
Yeah.
It's so odd to think about this thing that it is a table, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's not a
so
table,
it's a
but
relation,
it's a set that I can join
right?
to.
So any of these things are relations.
Right.
And in fact, also this is a relation that happens to be a set returning function. So we'll think of a relation as anything that returns rows in this case. A set returning function being a relation is a little bit weird and kind of, I don't know whether I would actually necessarily classify it as that, but we'll call it that for now. Yeah, so this is doing some sort of implicit join that says, well, I'm going to extract all of these things for a given row. So all of the rows that are returned by the set returning function for each row in my original thing, that's what I'm getting back. And actually, your previous one that gave us the array, so you'll see that for each, if I go down there, down one, right? No, one more. So the array ag guess, right? Yeah, sorry, that was the right one. So when I see that, like, run that one, so just so we can see, and maybe let's actually do game and author handle so that we, let's just do a where clause on that so that we can see a specific one and map the results of this to the results of the other thing.
Okay.
So yeah, that one's fine. Oops.
Apologies, I thought I had. But apparently I didn't.
Okay.
So there's that. Let me.
So, and honestly, we could have done that where clause actually up in the previous one, just so that otherwise we're not actually. I mean, up in the previous part of the thing, but it doesn't matter.
Oh, you're right. We could have. Good point.
It's all good. Look. Okay, so let's look at then. I wish we could have the two things next to each other, but we'll run this one. So you see here. So 𝗔𝗯cie𝘂𝗁 has like 6 guesses here, and if we look at the array, you'll see all of them in a row, right? And here we've just essentially extracted that array, and that's what this is doing. So when we so each row gets that set of tweets with it, or set of guesses with it, is we've extracted based on the regex matches. So it's the number of times that we match.
Yep.
So each match is then extracted as a new row, and the set returning function returns all of those rows. And that can be pretty useful there. So let's go back up to this query just so that people can match the query to the thing, and we should probably. So this is, we've done regex matches with ordinality. So what does with ordinality do? With ordinality is returning the number. So in the order that the rows are returned by the set returning function, with ordinality says this is the row number within that return of the set returning function. So it goes from 1 to 6 in this case. And that's it. I mean, one thing,
and that works for any set returning function, which was new to me. I just actually this morning released a blog post on what was it on? Generate series. Just doing some fun stuff with generate series, and generate series is a set returning function, right? You can take it out from there. So that was new to me. You actually brought that up recently, and I was like, oh, I didn't know this existed, because otherwise, if we didn't have this, we would most likely have to use a window function row number.
Yep.
And one of the problems with row number, and we all know this, it's like, yes, window functions are great, but they can be problematic because it has to iterate the whole set to get the correct row number based on your order and your partition. And so it's extra work. So this is awesome.
Yeah, it does actually an extra scan. This is the with ordinality basically tells it can do this inside the set returning function.
Yep.
So it limits the amount of work that it needs to do. The set returning function, basically it says, hey, okay, well, I know what context I'm in and I'm returning rows from this. I can just do this straight from the set returning function itself, because like that's easy. That's easier than going back and rescanning, which is what I would need to do if I had a window function there.
Exactly. Yep.
Cool. So that gives us something. So now we wanted to think about maybe doing a replacement. And
can I just quickly jump in here? Because this is one thing that, and I don't know if I have this, so I'm going to scroll a little bit. I apologize, everyone. Because we had been playing with this, I want to show you this. Right? If I didn't have this, this is a query that I had worked on for just a little bit last night, trying to make sure we could use the data. And I originally I want to do the, again, this was new to me. With ordinality is new. I'm like, oh man, I know this is there, but I couldn't quite figure out what I need to do with it.
Yeah, and I think that, by the way, just to be clear, the thing that I always forget and that is hard to remember is that I can refer back in that set returning function to the table that I mentioned earlier in the from clause.
Which, if I had just remembered that, like, totally easy. Like, this doesn't work.
And it's and I always forget that too. And I'm like, oh, how the hell do I do that? And the answer is, I just have to remember that I can do that.
Yeah. So the issue here was, and this happens to so many people in SQL in general. And let me see if maybe I can. Let me just run this and see if I can show you. Notice that in this, so this is just a random set of tweets. All of the guesses are there. This person at some point guessed it in 3 guesses. But because of the row number and the data I have, right, I'm taking a string, I'm splitting apart Unicode characters that have no inherent order, but I have to then, row number needs to know when to reset its counter. And so when I order it by author and game, which is what makes sense for that count, it doesn't retain
you didn't
the
order it by, you partitioned by, right? Let's say you partitioned by author and game.
Yes.
Yeah.
Partition by. But there's nothing for me to order by
within the window clause. But there's nothing great to order by, exactly.
And so that was like, this isn't working. And this happens so often to folks, like, why isn't this order staying the way, like, it's coming out of the other query correctly as soon as I get rid of this? It's like, yes, but again, this is iterating over the data set again and doing what you've told it to do. Well, I'm just going to go order these rows you've given me by these 2 columns. The rest of it's not guaranteed, folks. It's like, you're right. And so that's what happens. So ordinality is almost essential here because of the kind of data we're working with.
And I wouldn't want to, I can't determine the order, right? Like there's no ordering, there's no Wordle ordering. I mean, I might be able, if I felt like it, to write a collation that would do that. Sure. But that seems actually kind of impossible.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's guess ordering. Now you could get somewhere, but probably, I don't know.
So this is super helpful. This is great to be able to do this, and remember that you can refer back to the other thing.
Yeah. So let's see if we can use some other thing. So now what we wanted to do, right, is like we might want to count the number of each of the types of squares in each row of this to try and determine how many of X. I mean, that would sort of be the next place that I would go with this, right? So let's. I mean, how would we do that?
Great question.
So I'll start sharing my screen again.
Yeah, go for it.
I think probably we're going to want to use some sort of string function to do this. So string functions and operators. Maybe it's in here.
I'm going to ask you to zoom in again.
Oh. Is that better?
One more.
Good.
Thank you. Yep.
Yeah. So so we might want to see if we can find. I wonder if there's a. I wonder how we do this. So how would we do this? This is actually an interesting question. I have to think about this. So.
Well, I guess the question from here is, do we want to try and get this split out and actually insert it into a table that we can do more on, rather than just doing it on the array itself?
Yeah, so that would be one way that we do this. That might be easiest. Maybe we do a replace first. Is that what you're thinking?
That's what I originally had done. I don't know that my solution actually is probably the right one. Yeah, for whatever reason, it was using numbers, but I think that makes it a little bit harder to figure out.
So here's another. By the way, here's our thing. Look at that. Hey.
There it is.
Split to array, repeat, replace. I know that there's a substring. No. Aha, there we are. Count. Is that it? No.
Well, no, that gets you.
There's a way to do this though. I thought, but maybe not. Okay, so we might have to figure out some other. So one way to do this would be to actually, so we could generate we could take our string and just split it. Split part would do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Split part would do it. Would it do it? No, because
so split part doesn't do it, because what you're actually splitting. It actually ends up needing to be, there's another regex split essentially, or regex to array, which allows you to split on the character. The split part.
Okay, so the 𝗔𝗶𝗱, string position, could work, and we might be able to use that. And then I thought. We might also be able to use regex matches and do this again if we want to, right? We could get essentially G flag is used.
Oh, group of.
Yeah,
well, saying group of how many.
Yeah, what we want to know is how many actually occur, and this is the part where I'm a little confused. So. 𝗔𝗶𝗱. It doesn't do. Count. Here we are. No. I keep thinking that's it, but I thought that there was a way to do that. I'll have to look and see if I can find a better thing. But there, we could also. Yeah, there's probably ways to do this. Position. We're starting. Yeah, no. Okay. Overlay. No. Okay, so let's just see. Maybe the thing that we can do is essentially grab the why don't we do the replacement that you were talking about? We can convert it to like a number. That would be one way to do it. We could also take our string and just use a UDF to do this, right? Like we could just like essentially loop through each character in the string and decide, right? So that would be another way that we could do this inside of PLPG-SQL. Let me put you up instead.
Yeah, I
Is
was
that
just
what you
really
were?
quickly. Yeah, let me see if I can do this ordinality, and then I think it was. Is that what I meant to do? I was trying to get us back to this. Let's quickly see if this gets okay. There's our ordinality again. Does not exist because I'm selecting from what? Because I didn't select that here. All right, so we have our guesses. So this is where I had done. This is where I had gotten to at some point. Let me get this row number stuff out of here, so it's not that. So this is each line. I converted it to 1, 2, or 0, 1, or 2. I'm not sure that makes it as easy to figure out what. Yeah, there you go. That's as far
So
as I
you
got.
did it.
So
Okay, I see. So you did a you made it into an array essentially here, 0, 1, 2 array.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. So then, okay, can you just return that G array?
I could. So this was yes.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so that's we might also want to use trim on that on guess, but
Okay. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure. It doesn't seem to be consistent. I don't know why it's doing that. It doesn't seem to actually impact the.
yeah. Okay, never mind. Just is something
I
weird
think
with
that's a
the
visual thing,
yeah.
honestly.
Okay, cool. Okay, so then 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Okay, so well, one way that we could do this is just add all of them,
Thought about that.
right? So that would be one thing. We could so that would be one way of thinking about it, is just like adding all of them and then using that as a single metric. We could also do two arrays, one that or two conversions, right? One that gets us or three even in this case, one that gets us all of the like first level, one that gets us all the second level, one that gets us all the third level. Like so incorrect, partially correct, fully correct. We could do that. And then we could like sum across those arrays where, you know, as Booleans, and then basically sum the Booleans. That would be another way to do this. Or even just return the sums themselves, right? So that would be easy enough. So what's your clean guess function look like? Let's maybe look at that quickly, and then I think we're going to be about reaching our time anyway. But
yeah, this is a good next step into more detailed blog posts or another stream
yeah,
at some point. Yeah, so this was really my, and in fact, I probably would do this differently.
okay, got it.
I'm trying to think this through because we have come to learn that these two characters in particular are
A little bit annoying.
challenging.
Yeah, I mean that was only with 14,000. So I found that was about 14,000 tweets when I was doing that. So what we found, by the way, so just for some background, Unicode sucks, and those can be represented by multiple Unicode characters. So if you try and actually like do regex on the character, you can get two characters. Actually, let me show you this. So hold on, let me find this. and then I'm going to pull it over. So here, right? So it turns out that this gray box and that gray box are not equal, right? And even if I try and normalize them using 𝗙𝗵𝗽𝗀𝗃𝗃, which is some normalization for Unicode, they're still not equal. So I'm not sure exactly what's going on there, and I am a little bit confused, but they're definitely showing up as the same thing on my screen. So at some point, I probably need to go in and like look at the hex representation or something and figure out what that means. But like that's for another day.
Yeah, totally agree.
If we want to do that. But yeah, this is one of the problems that you end up running into if you try to deal with Unicode. It can be problematic. That's fine.
Yeah. So now that we know that, I probably would do something like, at least just to get a little bit more sanity, I would probably search for green and yellow. For the most part, those seem to be consistent, partially because that's the actual Twitter search I'm using. I'm assuming it's going to give me the same yellow and green since it's part of the actual search. Maybe that's a bad assumption. And then I would just replace anything else with 0. I wouldn't even search out what else is left, you know, if it's not one of these or something like that.
Yeah.
So are there other ways you would do this other than the replace function in this string?
Well, let's see. So I think like I said, I have to look this up. I thought that there would be a way to do that, but I'm now failing. Like I think that I want to get these counts, right? Like that's the main thing that I want to
Yes.
get.
Ultimately,
And
we want to
so
understand how many of each thing is in here.
right. So let's think about how we might do that, but maybe that's just a thing that we can do at some point in the future. And because we're actually running out of time anyway, I think we're right at we're about at our stopping time anyway. So sorry for not having more of that there. I thought that I knew how to do that, and it turned out I didn't. So, oh well.
It's all good.
Next time. So yeah, so I think at some point we can continue this. Let us know if you found that this was interesting, like if this was a useful topic for y'all, or if it wasn't. Please do let us know too. So hopefully that was good. And thank you so much for coming, Ryan. That was fun. Hopefully folks learned something from us
A
talking.
little bit more to learn. We'll definitely put this out there in some fashion because it's
Interesting topic.
It's interesting to recognize that you can do these things, right?
Yeah.
And you wouldn't. I think most people would jump to, in our current tech society world, would say like, well, I'm just going to throw this into Python, and that's not bad. I have nothing against
Yeah.
Python, but it is possible. There are you can do
in fact
this
sometimes
in
easier. I mean, it does allow you to then pretty immediately start doing statistics and other sorts of stuff on that.
I mean, the reality is the text is in here. This is the SQL so far, and we're not far from having everything we need to have the data to query. That's not a lot of SQL.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Cool.
So anyway.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much.
See ya.